Good evening, and welcome to Going for Two, the only YouTube podcast in human recorded history to feature a male and female host drinking our way through the most important topics of the day, as long as they touch the football world and not in that way. Good evening, Sharona. Have you read plenty of Tom Brady testimony so the rest of us don't have to?
Oh my God, I have been in hell today reading through all this Tom Brady stuff. I'm not through yet. So, but it's kind of nice to revisit those glory days when I was duking it out in, courtrooms all across America. So it's kind of nice to be able to just sit back and say, man, look at this guy.
Not my problem.
Not my problem. Yeah, things get messed up. Not have a dog in that fight. But yeah, it was kind of fun today, just sitting there wading through. Right now, I just got to the Troy Vincent testimony, so I understand that's kind of interesting.
Well, it's going to be a gathering of the Recovering Lawyers Club tonight, and me, because we have to jump into it quickly this week.
That's why we drink.
We only have so many precious minutes with a legend. Now, I've been listening to his voice all day, trying to catch up on the Audibles preseason watch list. He's a fellow Yinzer, loves fish concerts, long walks in the park, and saddling up to the infinite sports bar that is Twitter with more curiosity than vitriol. After all, he's not a sea monster. He's Sigmund Bloom. Good evening. Welcome to the show.
I feel like I'm on, the dating game. No, this is wonderful, and I want to use this moment. Of course, it's been wonderful getting to know both of you, appearing on Sharona shows, but this is the first time, Zach, that I've appeared on a show with you. So I want to take this opportunity to throw some props back at you, Zach, because you are one of the unsung heroes of our community. You are glue. Your positivity, your enthusiasm, it suffuses everything out there, and you were one of the people, I think, that really understood intuitively where this was all headed, because, well, we're all, you get up on a soapbox and say, hey, everybody, listen, we're all lawyers, so this is understood. We're all like narcissists, we're malignant narcissists, and certainly anybody who would want to hold themselves out as some sort of fantasy football expert, what a ridiculous thing that is.
Right.
But you have, like, truly, with love in your heart, honestly, validated us. And validated the community, and with coming from a place of a real pure enthusiasm that I think is what is the glue that holds this community together. So I'll drink to you tonight.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very fitting tribute. I will drink to that too.
We feel you, man. We feel you out there. I mean, definitely.
But I have to say, the fantasy football community, and Zach is definitely a great ambassador for it, but as a general, it's a fantastic community.
It is. Well, it's the whole point of fantasy football is supposed to be it's a shelter from all the things in life that scratch and tear and claw at you, and another thing that I love about Zach is your attitude really embraces like how serious there's life and death and then there's fantasy football, but also in an instant you can step back and make fun of yourself for caring so much about it. And we're all in that cycle, and you do a wonderful job of displaying it with grace. So this is a real treat for me too.
Yeah, he certainly does. When one shower cries, we all shower cry.
Exactly.
Yeah, the perpetual shower cry. It's like the perpetual flame at the JFK thing.
Exactly.
We need that to go. Well, wow, this is the first time my attempt for the over-the-top introduction has been topped, so
yes,
I'll try to gather myself.
You met your match.
Luckily, I have beverages to keep me going. So we actually interviewed, when I started the Ask Your Fantasy Football Expert series, you were number 19, and it was like summer of 2011.
Right.
And I believe you mentioned that you wanted to elevate the football discourse. How do you believe you've succeeded, and where are we going with that?
Oh, it's fantastic. Football can be a straight-up intellectual discipline, and we see now the prominence of somebody like Smart Football, like Chris Brown. His second book just came out. If you care about understanding football, then you're reading people like Chris Brown. Just the amount of film study, or the amount of abstracting out a level, or a level beyond a level. The community that is organized around Matt Waldman, who I think like our professor emeritus in our community.
He's great.
it's just there's so many more outlets now if you like the complexity of the game. And I think that's why the game's taking off worldwide, y'all. I mean, I've done a podcast in Australia, I've done a podcast in England. A lot of our staff is from England, Ireland. The game's catching on because it's just there's so much happening, and it seems chaotic, but there's an order to it all too. It embraces so many paradoxes, and it's like this beautiful glimmering jewel, and we watch the way the light bounces around in it, and we try to even for a second understand what we're seeing, and we can't. But that's why we stare at it so much, and the whole point is us elbowing. Did you see that? It's a shared experience. It's exhilarating, and I think that. Checking in now at 2015, we've got a cottage industry of talking about football now. Fantasy football is a raging torrent of money. Now, other industries are looking to fantasy football like, we want people to pay attention to us, and they pay attention to you. So how can we use you to make them pay attention to us? So it's quite a thing, and I think that the dynamic is almost flipped, where everybody thought and always we said one of our 3 mottos at Football Guys, well, not at Football Guys, because, Draft Guys was my company, but it was breaking down barriers, and y'all are doing that, the coverage for the thinking fan, which is what we're talking about, and all glory to the game. So we want to give glory to the game. We want to give glory to all the people who lay it on the line to make this such a compelling product. But now I think we're seeing that all the stuff that we do and all the silly hobbies and things that we have is actually driving interest in the game now. So it's amazing, because we were at the children's table. Whenever I started doing the Audible in 2006, when we had beat writers on, if they would even say yes to us, we were blown away if they even said yes. We would never use the word fantasy football, and that just seemed cheesy. Like, we don't care about my fantasy football team. You cover this team. This is a very serious discipline endeavor. How many touchdowns is this player going to have? Come on, that's for fantasy football. Let's just talk about football. And now, beat writers are making fantasy football projections. Jim Wyatt last year, you can talk about one of the most respected beat writers in the game. He's doing fantasy football projections, so it's been quite a thing to behold.
It truly has, and it has been quite a journey. I know it would probably take like an epic movie for you to explain the story, but maybe you could give the kind of journey you've taken
Sure.
from starting out to get involved with Audible and then becoming kind of a part owner of guys and working with the 2 legends as you do with David Dodds and Brian.
Well, really quickly, I just want to emphasize this part of it, is that almost everybody at Football Guys came up through the message boards, and you just wanted to be part of that community. Before there was Twitter, the place for smart football talk, really in-depth football talk, people parsing beat writer words and stories and things like that. If somebody was at a practice, at a training camp, and just gave us like a blow-by-blow details of what they saw, that was like a bone with like a little bit of meat left on it that we could, we would just jump on it. And this was in 2002, 2003, 2004, and you felt at home with this people who have, as Ryan Burns, awesome Ryan Burns, the sickness, the football sickness. And you work your way up through that proving ground, and if you can make it out of that proving ground and Football Guys taps you on the shoulder and say, hey, how would you like to write some articles for us? Then that's the big leagues. That was it. Like that was this was before the big media outlets were noticed fantasy football. I think Yahoo had leagues. I think ESPN had like Hector and Victor and that kind of stuff, but it was still not on their radar. So that was the place for the people that were really serious, and I was very lucky to be tapped on the shoulder and get that call. And I thought about making the jump before it was a thing. It was a made-up job, fantasy football analyst. It was a made-up job. Like 10 people had it. There was Joe and David and Greg Kellogg and so on. Paul Charchian and Bob Harris, all the big titans, all the people we're standing on the shoulders of, and then really briefly, concert, of course, live music. In 2006, we were hit by a drunk driver waiting across the street. My best friend Jeff Wilson did not survive the accident, and it really drove home for me that thing that sounds like an empty platitude. Like you could just be standing on the side of the road and get hit by a car, and you never know. But you really know, seriously, folks, I'm here to tell you, like you can't wait for life to roll out a red carpet. You can't wait for things to be safe or easy, or for someone to say, well, I'll say yes or no if you tell me what's going to happen. Life doesn't work like that. And I was, and somehow this became a thing. I got very lucky to scrape together some different things, and as just hanging around, now we've been here all along, and like the rest of the world caught up. So it's a beautiful time to be at the center of this community. And I think, speaking on behalf of Football Guys, as a representative of Football Guys, break into some Frank Sinatra or something. I think that's what's excellent about us, is that we've always been like a mom and pop. We're the indie band, We're the music other musicians listen to, because we haven't really made our mission secondary to anything else. There've been a lot of big, there's a lot of places you can dip your bucket in these rivers of money, and obviously we're still participating in that. But Football Guys runs by our internal ethos. If you know Joe Bryant, you get a real strong vibe from him. He's kind of the mayor of Football Guys, and it's always, from the moment I learned about Football Guys, that's where I wanted to be. That was the community I wanted to be part of, and I'm just so fortunate that they've embraced me.
It really is it's a great website. Everybody who writes there is fantastic, and yeah, I mean it was one of the first fantasy related websites that I latched onto once I started, when I first started playing fantasy football. That was in 2005 or 2006. I mean, we did it. It was all done by Excel spreadsheet.
Bring your magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. I mean, there was a guy who would come with his note. I had notes. I had lists and notes,
sure.
and a that I compiled myself, and
Exactly. Well.
And Sigmund, you'll appreciate this.
Sure.
They wouldn't even let me in without an interview. The commissioner wouldn't let me in without an interview.
Yeah, you showed them. And that's and that's an important thing too. That as the audience grows and becomes more inclusive, because that's another thing about fantasy football. I talked about this a little bit when I had Liz Loza on my show last week, just at the end as a coda. But I think it's a good topic to bring up since you brought that up, Sharona. That football and the football world for the most part has been a very male world, and I really do believe that there's a casual sexism in the football world that is now really starting to be taken head on. And I think fantasy football gives us a little bit of a shelter from that. And I do think that, like you said, there's a bit of resistance, a bit of some of that residual football culture. But for the most part, I hear from a lot of females playing fantasy football, winning their league, beating their husbands, beating their boyfriends, things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's awesome, because I think that in all facets and all walks of life, we can continue to again break down these barriers. And I think the football, what is it now? I think Liz quoted something like 42% earlier. I know it's not even now. 42% of the football audience is female. So it's great to see more prominent female voices in our little homespun football punditry world.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liz, is joining Yahoo as one of their fantasy people, and it's always great. It's been a big year already. We're just in August. It's been a big year already for women in sports.
Oh man, yeah. When we had the first female intern coach, the Women's World Cup, I think there's a lot more examination now of Serena Williams and how Serena Williams is portrayed in the media. So all these things. This is the point where I ask y'all, you want to do a sports and social issues podcast? So we want to start it right now, like here, live? Because I think that there's a lot of room. We're all thinking about all these things, and there's a lot of super live minds. So it's fantastic to have platforms all over the place to talk about these things and engage people on these topics.
Well, this is a good time to transition here, because I had a question from the FFD Jen herself, Jen Ryan. She's a big fan of Zero RB, but it seems like that's become such a buzzword that maybe it's being overused. What do you think about these kind of theories that people have, kind of the upside-down drafting type thing that Matt Wallman started?
Yeah, and my initial, and I'm getting breaking news about Lance Dunbar going to get some sort of X-rays. Anyway.
Oh, that's not good.
I know, right? Franco Floyd and his broken fingers. Come on, guys. Let's try to stay healthy. Not that I'm blaming them. Here's my initial response to all of those kinds of questions. Every strategy works if you pick the right players. Every strategy. It doesn't matter what order you take the positions in. It doesn't matter whether you take someone 2 rounds ahead of ADP. If you pick the right players, it don't matter. So you might be able to gain 2 or 3 or a 5% edge, some low single-digit edge by trying to exploit the way that the ebbs and flows. And I do this. I mean, I'm not knocking this at all. My master plan article, Sweet Spots and Dead Zones, I'll be writing up a lot of this stuff where these are the rounds that you generally want to be looking for these positions because it tends to coincide with more value and not. But we all know that no matter how much you stare at this, once it's revealed in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season, we're all wrong. We're all humbled. Everybody is. And we're all going to point to the stuff we got right because there's so much that we got wrong that we want to draw attention away from that. And it applies to everybody. So it's going to upside down drafting, do the opposite zero RB. It's had a lot of names over the years. It can work, obviously, because of running back depth, because you can wait now, don't take a running back in the first 5 rounds and get, Rashad Jennings and LeGarrette Blount. I'm fine with that if my quarterback's Andrew Luck and my tight ends Rob Gronkowski and I have 3 really strong receivers. If I start out wide receiver and take Jimmy Graham and then take Russell Wilson and get Allen Robinson in the 5th round or something like that, it can definitely work. But I think that any sort of rigid thinking going into your draft, you're risking missing something. You're risking something that's going to be presenting itself to you, and all you're going to be looking for is putting this template over your draft, like I've got to fit this over my draft, and you're going to miss what's happening. So I think it's important to be, it's kind of like when traveling. I love traveling. It's probably right there with live music and football, like right there with a true passion in life. And what I like to do is I like to learn everything I can about a place, and maybe have 3 or 4 things that I know I want to accomplish while I'm there, but still let the days unfold. See if I've learned about some event that's happening that I didn't. Leave flexibility so that once you're on the scene and you see what's happening, you can react appropriately to it. So I think that's a decent metaphor for how your draft goes. You want to have all your bases covered and understand what you're getting into and understand all the different, the roadmap. But once you're there, be willing to take, take different turns and go different places than you thought you were going to.
Yeah, you definitely have to be fluid, and there's something to be said for process and results. Because a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm the one guy in my league that's not going to keep a quarterback. So in a year where RG3 and Peyton Manning were available, I drafted Jay Cutler. So obviously the results were poor, but the process had an opportunity. Unfortunately, yeah, it kind of blew up in my face, and now Jay Cutler's an ongoing joke forever. But it's back now. We have actual live football happening this Sunday. And looky here, the Pittsburgh Steelers are involved. So will there be tears spilled when Jerome Bettis does a speech?
Oh, probably just because Bettis is associated with that Super Bowl run that broke the drought. I was born in '75, so all the big Steelers years happened while I was still barely aware of football. Although growing up, being born then, you were very aware of football when you lived in the Pittsburgh area. Once you were aware of things beyond like your own belly button, and but I suffered through the Steelers of the '80s, the Bill Cowher years, almost finding ways to lose basically in big games, and then Jerome Bettis, of course, the Super Bowl being in Detroit, and he was Jerome Bettis is one of those players. I think y'all understand this, like the Smiling Warriors, Marshawn Lynch, Hines Ward was probably the best example of this. Rob Gronkowski is another guy I love for this. These guys that play with a joy in their heart, you just see it. You see it on their. They're guys who are into the violence of the game. We all know the famous picture of Jerome Bettis just pushing Brian Urlacher into the ground like he's a little second grader, to get out of my way. And this is latter-day Jerome Bettis. So they can still bring the violence when the game calls for it, but the joy that they play the game with, it's wonderful. These are the kind of players that excite me to draft, to have on my team, and to celebrate whenever they do well.
I certainly wasn't a fan at the time, but if anybody could go out the right way, it was Jerome Bettis.
Mm-hmm, yeah. No, it was storybook.
It was.
Just like this year when Frank Gore and Andre Johnson go out, Super Bowl winner. Maybe not out, but the reunion.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that will the Colts make the Super Bowl, and if they do, will they win it?
They can. You give Andrew Luck a chance against anybody in any circumstances. But what I love is, and this is where I again embrace the emotional side, the human side of football. Mm-hmm. And this is something I try to really weave into a lot of my analysis, or at least emphasize that this is a part that we can't ignore. Mm-hmm. Narratives are important. We all live our lives by narratives. Even if narratives are imaginary, there's a placebo effect of narratives. And you have Chuck Pagano and Rob Trzynski going all the way back to Gore and Andre Johnson when they were all together at the U, in the journey that their careers have all taken, all coming back together at this moment. When the Colts, Andrew Luck is, it's like the fruit is ripe now in his 4th year. I think that he's ready. He's ready to be the kind of player that can put his team on his shoulders in the playoffs, but with this kind of supporting cast that he's never had before. It's going to be exciting, and this Arian Foster injury. You now look at them as potentially the AFC may just be as simple as where are they going to play the AFC title game. If it's in Foxborough, then New England's going to the Super Bowl. If it's in Denver, then Denver's going to the Super Bowl. Maybe not Denver. If it's in, who's going to be playing at Denver? If it's in Indy, though, you like those chances, and if they can run the table in their division, if they can get home field advantage,
which they should be able to, right?
I think you would. Those are like, oh yeah, you would hope. That's like the video game on easy, So I'm excited. I'm excited for it.
I'm buying big into Frank Gore and Andre Johnson, and I really like that. Might be, of course, it's still no games have been played yet, right? But that might be Ryan Grigson's saving grace, because his previous free agency decisions and a lot of his draft decisions outside of Andrew Luck have been terrible. He really needs Frank Gore and Andre Johnson to do well.
Yes, because the trades, he's made a ridiculous number of trades, and most of them have blown up in their face. So I agree. Vontae Davis has been maybe one of the few shining examples.
Yeah,
but isn't it funny how, and this is kind of how it is as a fantasy owner too, right? Like one really good decision, or one being in the right place at the right time, really, and not a decision, because taking Andrew Luck was not a decision. It was just being in the right place at the right time. A moment of that can overshadow lots of really bad decisions. I think the same thing can happen with fantasy football.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's so much. I mean, we do all of this over analysis and overthinking and everything, but it's so much luck.
Well,
but don't
it
tell
perfectly
anybody.
works out that way. No, I actually
don't
was.
Tell anybody that.
I actually was in Indianapolis the day they traded for Trent Richardson. I met up with Brian Ballmer, who lives there, and he was so excited. And I think everybody blew up, and they were like, "Man, the Browns, what a dumb trade that was." And they were still selling Trent Richardson jerseys like last year. Right? They didn't have anything besides Luck that was really a guy. But it's like, yeah, you can make mistakes and still have a good team. You know why? Because you have that quarterback who is the guy.
Yeah.
That's why quarterback wins are I mean, I think people think they're saying something really smart when they say quarterback wins are dumb. It's not a stat. Every single stat in the NFL reflects the efforts of more than one player. Even kickers, like the snap and the hold and being able to block and keep guys out of the trajectory of the path of the ball. There is not a stat in the NFL that is purely what one player does. Maybe like penalties that they commit or something like that. So every stat reflects an intersection of players' efforts. Quarterback wins just represents that of all the players on the field, in most cases, the one most responsible for the win or the loss is the quarterback. And I think that's something we all understand, and yet there's this pushback against talking about a team's win-loss record when someone's the quarterback, when I think it's important.
Now, one of the reasons why the Audible will always remain in heavy rotation is because before it became big deal, you guys were on the whole, there is no off season. I think you take about 4 days off in some point in February, but really, other than that, it's nonstop. So are you going to get back into the whole college all-star road trip? And how hard is it to decide what radio station to listen to when you're in the car with Matt and Cecil?
we actually fight over like whose playlist we get, No, the fun thing about there is no off season is, and again, we're all recovering attorneys. As an attorney type approach to these things, there's a part of your mind, and daily fantasy really scratches this itch, and so does drafting, where your mind, there's some little part of your mind that's constantly running through it. And it's really fun to then add that all year, right? I mean, in some ways it's fun. In some ways I've like taken something that's somewhat unhealthy and turned it into an occupation, because there's another season happening. The power rankings are changing. Teams are moving up and moving down. The combatants are not the players. It's the front offices. It's the coaches. It's the scouts. And you also learn so much about how a team conceives of itself through its free agent moves, through the decisions they make on players, who they keep and who they don't keep from their own players, because no teams always evaluate their own talent better than the other 31 teams' talent.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, who they draft, and specifically when you get down to the either/or choices in the draft, they could have taken this player or this player, and you see what they value. And I think that they teams have to tell the truth when they make those moves. They can zigzag and mess around with us and everything else they talk about, but they have, when you read off of that card, that's the truth. And when you understand the context of those players by scouting them, by knowing their college careers, then it adds so much more significance to the idea that that team would want that player and what that really means. And I think it adds in that origin story, that the prologue to the big story of the NFL season. I think that if the draft was played up, it's a sporting event. We already know it gets the ratings and coverage like a season. If it's just presented the right way, it can be a very, very compelling story, human story and a sports story. As far as getting back on the road goes, I've got a 5.5-year-old son who's a handful. And I'm the primary because this job, this lifestyle has given me the opportunity to be. My wife's a felony prosecutor. She is not a recovering attorney. She might be soon, though, partially because the fantasy football world is doing so well. But I'm the first string home care, keeping the homestead held down, which makes it hard to get away for as long as we did before Miles was here. But there'll come a time that hopefully they do grow up and settle down a little bit, I hope. And I can't wait to get back out there because I love to hear that at the Senior Bowl people still say, "Where's Sigmund?" And I hope I can get back before they stop asking, because once they stop asking, then they don't care anymore.
Well, we had our first big injury with Arian Foster, so what do you think Houston's going to do? Talking about how quick social media works, there was a rumor that Pierre Thomas was coming to the Houston.
Right.
And I was doing a draft, and someone drafted him 5 minutes later. We're in the 12th round of a draft. So what does Houston do? And is Arian Foster a little bit like Josh Gordon, who had to wait 10 weeks, or is that injury basically he's off the board for this year?
I mean, I moved him down to the 10th round. I need to, now that we know the nature of the injury, reevaluate that a little bit. But and 10th round is about where I get my draft. We're what the heck? I'll draft purely for ceiling once we get to the 10th round, even if it's a 10% or 5% or 1% chance of hitting that ceiling. The last player I can remember with the words groin became detached from the bone was Fred Taylor. We all remember that picture when he just laid the ball down ow, I have to lay down near the football.
Amazing. I don't even have what you guys have. It makes me hurt.
Exactly. Yeah, you never want to hear that. So, Arian Foster is the type that will play when he's ready to play. And in the case of an injury like this, because if I recall correctly, during that season, there was lots of Fred Taylor might return in a few weeks. Fred Taylor might return in a few, and then at the end of the season, Fred Taylor was never going to return. That wasn't actually going to happen. And I think that it's possible. Now, the Texans, if they do put him on IR designated return, that means something. That means they see some chance, because that's a valuable spot, and somebody else might need that spot. Somebody else could get hurt. So that tells me there's some expectation he can return during the season. You don't know how effective he'll be. You don't know if he'll have a setback during the season. It depends on the league size, 16, 18, 20-man rosters. Obviously, the higher the rosters or the teams, the thinner the waiver wire, the more you want to just draft and stash Foster. But if I had to put money on it, he's not going to be a fantasy factor this year. And I don't know that any running back is. And Pierre Thomas could still sign there. They said they might revisit it. I'm sure that they gave him a low ball offer, and Pierre was like, yeah, thanks, no thanks.
I think they gave him a vet minimum.
Yeah.
Which, he might as well wait for another opportunity, right?
Yeah, and it's not going to be pretty. It wasn't a very efficient running game as it was last year, even though they led the league in carries. And as Lance Zierlein has pointed out, they have a new left guard and a center. No passing game to speak of whatsoever. I love Nuke Hopkins, and I'm seeing this narrative go around, but this means he's going to get more targets. And he might get more targets, but how good are those targets going to be?
Yeah.
And all you have to stop is Nuke Hopkins. So I don't know. It's bleak. You're looking at Houston's offense now kind of along Buffalo's, where it's in their interest to make every game like a Greco-Roman wrestling match, where there's sumo, where you're just kind of bumping each other around and win 6-3. So that's not good for fantasy football.
Not really. Now, you as a guy, a mainstay in the fantasy industry, you got to have a bunch of fantasy leagues that you're already signed up for. Is there a certain type of league that like would turn your head to go, oh, I got to try this out? Like, there's just one that gets you a little more
Sure.
excited than most standard type leagues.
Well, I mean, tonight I'm doing a Reality Sports Online re-auction that we do every year, and that's salary cap contract. I think anytime you're doing salary cap contract where you have to take a stand on players, signing them for 2, 3, 4 years, having penalties if you cut them before the contract up, is committing to those, and also like the escalators, like if you sign them to a 4-year deal, it doesn't go up as fast. It adds that layer of strategy that I think is very stimulating. Again, as those of us with overactive minds, if you're an attorney, you're a head case. I mean, it's just
It's
true.
true.
We're all lost souls. Feel sorry for. I know people are like lawyers, you good lawyers, but just feel sorry for us. Just be glad that you didn't get caught. You didn't get your toe caught in that little loop. So, I would say that we will overthink this stuff, and I lost my train of thought. It's because of this. No.
It sounds. I've never played in a league where you have to do that.
Yeah, that's right. The strategy.
Do all the contracts and stuff like that. I think I would enjoy that.
It's good because and you learn the ropes. It's just like if you come over to Dynasty, like your first or second Dynasty team might be a disaster, and that's how you figure it out. The other league I want to bring up, and I just tweeted about this I think earlier today. It's called Goyd on Roids, and speaking of another glue person in the fantasy football scene, someone that's really under the radar, and he's probably going to hate that I would mention him. Robert Wright at Football Robert. Talk about someone that has the sickness. Oh, yes. And this is a league where there's been an attempt, and Gene Bramall has also invented a scoring system, the IOP scoring system. And I can't remember, Miller administrates these leagues, IOP leagues, where you're trying to make every position roughly the same value, and that includes IDP positions, right? So that you really have very hard choices, and you have no idea how the draft is going to go. So, for instance, in this league, you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 2 tight ends, you have a jacked up IDP scoring system. So, last year I took Robert Quinn in the first round. J.J. Watt went in the first round. Tight ends were going, guys like Jordan Cameron were going in the second round. Levante David went in the second round. And it really forced you to just take stands on players because there was no, going back to zero RB and that kind of stuff, there was no, you game the system by taking this position and there'll be, you would think that in other drafts you can kind of anticipate how the picks are going to go between your picks. You can't in this draft. You have to just actually have strong feelings about players. There's no angle. And just to really emphasize that, and and of course I'm bringing this up because I won last year, because this is an extremely competitive league, and Gene Bramall's in this league. So I drafted Adrian Peterson in the second round. I drafted Victor Cruz in the 5th round. I stepped on some major landmines. Vincent Jackson was a big underperforming player. I got Heath Miller was my 7th round pick. He was an underperforming player. And so on and so forth. However, because every position matters as much as every other position, all these picks, it isn't like, just nail your first few picks and you'll be fine. No, you have to have a strong team top to bottom. Like your scores are, 300 plus points sometimes in a week, and it makes the entire draft important. And there's only 8 bench spots for 22 starting spots, so the waiver wire is red hot every single week.
What kind of roster did you have to roster?
Well, what ended up happening was I think my team started like 1-4. See, now you got me looking at this because I want to see exactly. My team started like 1-4, and then I think I was undefeated for the rest of the season. And if I look at my lineup, I can tell you who really came on for me in Week 16. Yeah, so what happened was C.J. Anderson, C.J. Anderson, Kelvin Benjamin was a big contributor. Jarvis Landry was a big contributor. This also has some return points. So, and everyone who plays in return yards leagues knows Jarvis Landry is money. I was able to get Roethlisberger and Russell Wilson in the 3rd and 4th round. And because it's a 2-quarterback league, quarterbacks still go off the board like any other 2-quarterback league, despite the fact that all the other positions are important. But defense was really where it's at. Guys like Rob Ninkovich. I think I hit some home runs with pass rushers that week, the championship week, like Derek Morgan and Terrell Suggs. I love James Hedebo in Detroit. That's a great playmaker defense. And there's just there's fumble recoveries and interceptions and sacks abound. So these kinds of plays, like a sack, I don't know exactly how it breaks down. It's going to be worth like 8 or 10 points in the scoring system. So I love leagues that really make it hard for you to anticipate how the draft is going to go and force you. Auctions are great for this too. It forces you to get back to what you really feel about players, not some
Mm-hmm.
sort of either-or propositions where it's really easy to just game the system. There is no shortcuts whenever you're drafting against people who know their stuff.
Yeah, I really like auction leagues too. I'm starting to do a lot more of those.
Yeah, any league where they even things out, like Scott Fish is doing the King of the Hill League, which is just quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, but it's quarterback flex, and tight ends are worth 1.5 per catch. So that really evens it out, and you're just comparing players, not going, well, I need 7 wide receivers and 2 running backs, so obviously that's more important. And that's good because any league that allows you to try different strategies, have a chance to win, is always fun. And it's, I was joking with Scott. I'm like, so you do the Scott Fish Bowl 360, you do this with 48. Do you do any 12-team leagues? Because that's very boring for you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But there are always 12-team leagues in a Russian nesting doll kind of thing. Now, I know you're doing a draft coming up, so your time is limited. So before we call it a night,
Yeah.
first, I want to say thanks to you and Cecil. Because of you two, I have C.J. Anderson and Joey Cabell in my dynasty team. Drafted them picked them up way before anything happened with them. So tell everybody about Football Guys, all the work you do, how it's exploded this year, especially the daily content.
Right.
Everything you have to offer.
Sure. It's fun. I mean, and I feel so lucky, so blessed to work with the people I work with because I'm in awe of the people I get to work with. Apps, mobile draft dominator, you're gonna everything you need on your phone to destroy your draft. The magazine app is updated constantly with new articles. It's not a static magazine, although it gives you that same magazine experience. If you get a subscription, Insider Pro subscription, you get a money-back guarantee for 30 days, but trust me, you won't be needing it. We have 150-page plus ebooks, Cracking FanDuel, Cracking DraftKings, where we get the collective brain power of Football Guys we're calling it like turning the guppies into piranhas, and we're going to devour the sharks. We're going to take them down. We're going to make it so that the big players, and those of you who've done DFS know what I'm talking about. They're going to see. We're going to de-skeletonize them like piranhas. We're going to give you that ability, and the daily fantasy coverage, and we're going to also branch out into college daily fantasy coverage. So we've got a ton of new hands on deck and old hands on deck to guide you through that and have a lot of fun with it. And as we were talking about, it's the puzzle. We all are drawn to these puzzles, and no matter what the puzzle is, this is why I think it's really funny, by the way, that there's fantasy football purists out there like, PPR, what should you get a point for? Okay, then don't play in PPR leagues, that's fine. I mean, there's all kinds of different scoring systems and puzzles to try to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Pick the ones you like and go for it. That's what's neat, is there's a variety for something for everybody, okay? If you don't like it, don't do it, it's fine. And it's all fantasy football. It's all like a level of abstraction away from anything real, so there's not really a way to say that there's a right or wrong way to do it, except no Week 17 Super Bowls. That's one I will say. But we are as obsessed 12 months, 365, 24/7 about this stuff as everybody. It's a community, and it's unbelievably vibrant. And going back to what we were talking about, all being reformed attorneys, right? What's neat, and you like Sharona, I loved your picture of coming into your draft with all these papers, all these notes, right? No, it's like you're going to trial, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was the whole thing, is that fantasy football, we all took our talents and our special abilities, and I'll speak for myself, and I know that I'm not the only one that this applies to. Like, I tried harder at my fantasy football teams than I did at my work sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the reason I was like, wait a second, wait. I think I just thought of something. Why don't I try to make this work? Because I would attack it with that same verb that you would work, with the same tools in your toolbox that you would at work. And that's what's neat about Football Guys is we've got a hedge fund manager, we've got a doctor, we've got engineers, we've got people that are in all kinds of areas of law, lots of reform lawyers in fantasy football. People that like to think too much about things, and then you take all of their unique perspectives and apply it back to fantasy football, and you get this really wonderful, and we don't have any like toe the company line stuff. We can totally disagree with each other. The staff is going to give you their individual opinions. So it's really fun. It's a really fun time to be doing this. It's fun to be on y'all's show. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this, and I love our community. I feel like we're really at, like, I say this every year, but it feels like it's the golden age, it's the peak, and the real joy in this is the people, and I think that the work that y'all do reflects that very well.
Well, thank you, Sig. Thanks for coming on. We really, really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I can't wait until next time.
Yeah, thanks for pulling up to the Infinite Sports Bar. And
Yeah.
Sigmund Bloom, if you can't spell it, well, it's actually spelled out on his when he talks. And if you can't, come to me. So thanks again. Oh, he's out because he's got a draft. Dang it.
Yeah, the all important draft.
And I'm glad I didn't throw any Titans questions in there. So of course,
Don't ruin all the excitement. Everybody's excited about Marcus Mariota. Don't rain on their parade, Zach.
Oh my gosh, that is so. The thing that the only note I took besides questions for Sigmund was, has the Mariota has no red flags, which is a red flag thing, gone too far?
Ugh.
It's like he hasn't thrown any interceptions. Why is that bad exactly? He didn't throw a lot of interceptions at Oregon, but they had a system. Now, here's something that I didn't say last week that annoys the crap out of me. Everybody says this guy was a system quarterback and he was really good in that system. Well, if he's really good in a system, why don't you run that damn system? Or I mean, it's like you can't run Oregon's system in the NFL, or I don't know. If it's working, then do it. And maybe Mariota's better than people think, right? And why not have a reason to be excited as Titans suffering quasi fans?
Long-suffering Titans fans deserve to have excitement.
I mean, they said something like 3,400 fans showed up the day he was signing autographs. But I swear that same day I saw that 12,000 people showed up to see the Cardinals. So it's still relative. But training camp, I mean, 3 years ago, would 20 people show up? I mean, now it's nuts.
There's always been fairly big crowds.
I mean, I went to the Falcons and the Titans had joint practices last year.
Comparatively speaking.
And I went there, and they had vendors and drinks and all that, and a few hundred people were there. It was pretty crazy. You could tell people would go there every day. I mean, it was that big a deal.
Yeah.
Because we love the footballers.
Football.
So, Sharona, how you doing? How you doing tonight?
How's
that beer? Is it living up to the
beer is good.
Dragon Milk standards?
It is not Dragon Milk. It's still good. It is called, I haven't checked in yet, Black is the new Wit. And it's an IPA. Terrapin is what it is, and it's quite tasty.
But
it's not a coffee stout. I love me some cappuccino coffee stouts.
Well, I should bring you up some of the Wild Heaven. They have a brown ale, but it's got kind of coffee involved with it. So I'll bring some up.
Please do.
To your secret location.
To my secret hideaway.
That's right. I'm just still I knew the interview would feel like 5 minutes, and it really did. I had a bunch of questions, and I just kept all right, let me skip. Let me try to go to the ones that get the best response. Well, anything's going to get a response. Apparently, he does this a lot, talking about football.
He's great. Every time he's on anything I'm involved with, and I love his voice. I just sit and listen to him. I'm just entranced.
I know, it's funny because he and Cecil, I didn't pull up my favorite line, the platonic, life partner thing, because it's the way they feel because they've done so many shows together. But Cecil kind of plays the radio guy because he is actually a radio guy. But yeah, Sigmund's really stepped it up. Not to say it was sure before, but one thing is intriguing. They keep adding people to football guys, but they only seem to have 3 or 4 of them actually do podcasts. So I'd be interested to see if they're going to open up to more voices, especially because they're doing daily fantasy podcasts this year. I mean, if you think the podcast market is crowded already, it's just going to blow up this year, especially with daily. I mean, it is going to be crazy. I wonder, do you think you're going to play daily this year? Because I'm wondering.
I know. I was just thinking that myself. I was like, I haven't done daily yet. Maybe. Probably.
it feels like with everybody stepping up their coverage, that you're going to have to be way better to actually consistently win. But at the same time, so many people are going to be joining that they might just. They were talking about do the Thursday through Monday games because people just like to see guys on TV, so they put a bunch of Thursday night guys in, even though usually those games suck. But there's a lot to it. I don't know. I'm just throwing out random thoughts at this point. Poor Arian Foster, though. I really do like the guy. I mean, for that to happen, I had a trade offer to a league mate, basically Adrian Peterson for Arian Foster, and I would get a trade up in the draft. And I'm kind of glad he didn't say yes.
Yeah, that's good. Good. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you always hate to see injuries, and especially something serious so early in training camp. And poor Texans, they just can't seem to catch a break with their offensive woes.
Don't you remember Ryan Fitzpatrick having 6 touchdowns against the Titans last
I
year?
certainly do.
Talk about daily football
Lord have
bonanza.
mercy. Yes, I do remember that.
It's kind of unfortunate that Jake Locker didn't stick around long enough to have that one revenge game against the Titans. No.
Poor guy. I mean, how many? Anyway, it's kind of interesting. I was having a chat on Twitter earlier with Gwen Robinson, who covers the Ravens for NFL Female. We were talking obviously about their team and Matt Elam and his injury, and I asked her if there was any possibility that Bernard Pollard could come back, and she didn't seem to think so. He's still. It's like the Titans are the team that safeties go to die. Because they killed Jordan. Poor Jordan Babineau just never recovered from playing for the Titans. Well, Chris Hope, he finished his career here, so you can't really blame anything there. But then George Wilson, he's still on the street. Bernard Pollard, he hasn't been signed, so it's kind of sad.
Yeah, the strange Bills to Titans safety pipeline continues.
Yeah.
I don't even know. We'll see. Does it make you crazy to see when people actually do stats for like training camp? They're like, Marcus Mariota was 13 for 22 today. I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. Like, one thing that Sigmund talks about is that there is daily fantasy for preseason, which would make your head explode. But what about training camp daily fantasy? Come on, let's step it up. Come on, something new.
I think I would take a hard pass on that.
Yeah, I put too much in there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you see one person do it, you got to do it. I don't know. I mean, I think that there are far more relevant things to talk about from training camp than Marcus Mariota going 13 of whatever in shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah, has anything really popped up to you in this kind of first week of training camp? Things that like actually seem like they're relevant?
In terms of the entire league?
Anything like fantasy, real life, maybe change your view of a player or a team coming into this year?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I think that you have to be, you're watching Johnny Manziel because you really sort of kind of thought maybe, he might be the guy, but he still doesn't sound ready. The other thing that's you're seeing guys that are going high in these fantasy drafts like LaShawn McCoy, DeMarco Murray, and they're already being held out. And it's stuff like that you kind of tuck away. And then the other thing that's kind of stood out to me has been, I have been kind of high on Charles Clay, and I've also bought a little bit into Robert Woods because Sammy Watkins is you.
You're home, wifey. Sorry,
Okay, all right.
I hear noises coming in. Sorry.
So you're a little bit concerned about the Bills' offense. Clearly, they're going to run the ball a lot. So, I mean, just little things like that. But no, you can't make any major conclusions yet.
I think that was the same point because I listened to, I don't know, like 8 episodes of the Audible, the preseason watch list. And I was kind of feeling like Andy Dalton, not as a starter, but as like a backup quarterback, had upside because of all his receivers being hurt. But based on the way the offense is going, it sounds like it's very run heavy. So even though they have all these receivers that seem to be good, yeah, the excitement level for anybody besides AJ Green and maybe even including AJ Green is kind of blah. So that's a bit of a. Sometimes we can be super optimistic and then go, oh yeah, they are the the Bengals. Because did you see the article today? It was like in Sports Illustrated about the Rams, and they were talking about Tavon Austin and how he was underutilized because the quarterbacks were so bad. And I was like, even the guy who wrote that article couldn't believe that Tavon Austin was going to be, some kind of major weapon who would have any relevance at all.
I don't know. I did not. Who wrote that?
I think it was Don Banks. I just saw that, and
okay. I like Don Banks.
That's one thing about Twitter that's kind of funny is during each day, and unfortunately I don't get to check as much now because I have this thing called a job. There seems to be a focus on like one thing every day, and there was like the Foster injury yesterday, and then today that Tavon Austin article came out, and then the whole Mariota red flag thing started to kind of ripple around.
That red flag thing's been going on for a long time. I saw it. Yeah.
Like, I want a gunslinger. Guy's going to throw it to triple coverage. Like, yeah, I can see that. Brett Favre did pretty well, but usually those guys, it doesn't work out. And, I mean, you have to be a certain level of a leader, and it sounds like from the Titans that Mariota's, reached that level. So, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued to see preseason, just see how he does. Hopefully he doesn't do like Jake Locker and tries to like break 4 tackles to get a first down, in a preseason game, running the ball. He'll probably slide. That's my guess.
Poor Jake Locker can't win even in retirement. People still hating on him.
Aw, but I still have the jersey to prove it.
The jersey.
I've already decided that I'm going to try to put together this little audio package for my draft, my local draft, with a little and starring this guy who's been in the league this many years kind of thing. But I might have to splice Sigmund's little, love letter in there. Everybody will vomit.
Let me go back to Tavon Austin just real quick. I remember people trying to sell that Kool-Aid. I think Zach was with me on this. They were trying to sell that Rams Kool-Aid the year that they drafted him. They
I hope there's no record of this.
They signed Jared Cook.
Oh, I knew Jared Cook would be Jared Cook.
Yeah, and everybody was going crazy. The Rams offense is going to be all that. And some of us were like, you might want to slow your roll a little bit on that. And I actually wrote an article about it. I mean, you kind of saw that one coming.
Is there like certain music they play with like the Three Stooges or something? They should just do, when Jeff Fisher finally retires, like all the receivers that he drafted with the Titans and signed as free agents, they almost all were terrible. I mean, we were shocked that Nate Washington actually was a pretty good player with the Titans because usually the free agents they signed and the guys they drafted were horrible. Derek Mason somehow survived that curse. But it's came over to the Rams. I mean, Tavon Austin had like some crazy 300-yard rushing game in college, and Stedman Bailey put up crazy numbers. He had like 25 touchdowns. They've barely done anything in the NFL.
I'm still a big believer in Studman. The suspension tampered by Studman! He tempered my enthusiasm, but I still think that when it's all said and done, he will have, may not be saying very much, but I still think he'll have the better NFL career. But yeah,
It's
yeah.
one of those fantasy football theories that has no relevance at all, but a cool
By
name.
the way,
People like those guys.
did you happen to see the Titans training camp Vine that was set to Benny Hill music?
I would like to see that.
It was very funny.
What happened this time?
They were doing some stupid drill where they
Something
were.
with the running backs, because I
No, it was the
yeah,
wide
that's so funny.
receivers,
Okay.
and they were tossing the ball up and running
What's the
around,
guy?
and it was funny.
Yeah, well, I got back into the game. I was out for a couple weeks, and now I'm doing the Scott Fish. It's kind of like the 360, but tight ends are 1.5 per catch, and it's best ball, which is kind of changes things. You're like, well, if this guy has 2 good weeks, I like it because I don't have to start him. So I picked up Mark Sanchez in that league. Yeah, baby. I have a feeling. I'm starting to get a feeling. Mark Sanchez is gonna be fantasy relevant this year.
Really, you think so? Okay.
Because Bradford's coming back for an injury, and I'm seriously thinking, just good thing no one in my fantasy league, watches this. Just drafting Bradford and Sanchez as my quarterback 2 and 3, and whoever starts will be just fine.
Yeah, I've had that strategy, not with Sanchez and Bradford, but in other areas. So, how's the new job going?
I'm in week 4, and I'm still there. Look at that. It's an absolute whirlwind. I'm sorry I implied that I was an ex-lawyer like you, but I figured we were going with it, so I was just going to roll. My wife used to work with lawyers, so I feel like I know what it's like.
So she was generally miserable too?
Yeah, she worked at a law firm, so she was in marketing, and one time a lawyer in a meeting with everybody in the company was talking about the lower people, which referred to everybody who wasn't a lawyer at the company. So yeah, it's a bit of an issue. It's a certain personality as a lawyer. It's kind of like quarterback in a way. Like you got this big ego, and just sometimes you forget that there are people in the world. Yeah, but you're recovering, right? Isn't it a 12-step process? Is that what it is?
It's a process. You got to trust the process.
Something like that. Of course, I didn't want to say when Sigmund mentioned that I was like glue. That aren't the dead horses? Don't they get turned into the glue too? So another way to look at it.
Don't start that.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I was trying desperately to catch up on my Scott Fish Bowl because I'm the guy who's like, I'll send out 60 interview requests in a week, and then everybody starts sending them back, and I'm like, oh crap, I could actually put these up on my site. And I've been trying my best to catch up. And at some point, this is the week that I've actually finished. So I've actually sent requests to all 360 people in the Scott Fish Bowl. Now I can go back and ask the people who haven't responded yet if they want to do that. Because it would be nice to get all 360. That might be impossible, but it would be kind of cool to have all 360 people in the league to do it.
I agree. It would be very cool.
As this has progressed, I've actually gotten more responses. There are a couple of divisions where I've had like 7 or 8 people respond, and usually it's like 2 or 3. So that's good. But it's like, oh, I get to do the work. I don't have an intern, damn it! I need an intern. All I have are cats, and they're useless for work. They're very cute though, aren't they? Dang, look at us. We've done an hour.
The kitty cats are very cute.
Even a lifelong avowed dog person agrees. Kittens are hard to beat.
Kittens are always cute. They haven't grown up to be evil cats yet.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. Anything else happen? Anybody get kicked out of Tennessee program this week, or are they doing good?
Well, it sounds like Von Pearson is going to be reinstated. The district attorney announced today that no charges were going to be filed.
Yes.
There had been an allegation that he raped a young lady, that the the evidence was not sufficient for them to go forward, and so the rape kit came back negative, as I understand it, which is pretty good indication that maybe there's nothing there. So so good news for Tennessee and for the fans there.
Sigmund Blue mentioned that whole social justice and sport things. I'm like, I know someone who's doing that right now, and she's on the other side of this show. Right? Right in this talk back?
Well, yes, we did not get a show going today. All kinds of technical issues this morning. So we're going to try again, and hopefully in the morning. My guest is best-selling author, was supposed to be best-selling author Julie Brana, who is a Seattle Seahawks fan, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but her mic wasn't working, and so we didn't get to do that. Maybe tomorrow morning.
It's kind of like, who was it?
It was kind of nice, just to have the morning.
Yeah, I bet. It's kind of like, I can't remember who it was who said, like, democracy is like the worst government ever created except for all the other ones. Google Hangouts is the worst hangout technology created, except there's nothing better right now to easily post something online quickly. So, yeah. And, yeah, their audio issues at least a third of the time. And it was impressive tonight. We just jumped in, and that was great. So good work, Sharona. You could be in charge of getting the guests from now on and stepping it up. Not that we don't love the guests we had before. Of course, everybody's great to talk to.
Is this how you flex?
Yeah, maybe. Then we have somebody for next week. Who would that be?
Yes, we do. We have Ty Miller. Ty!
Ty in St. Louis. He and his wife on Twitter do Twitter dates, so we can talk about that. And the fact that he has won.
Oh, my God. They're so adorable.
By the way, he won the Scott Fish Bowl after drafting Jake Locker as his second quarterback. So there is life after, I know, again.
There is life after drafting Jake Locker?
There better be. So what do you have going on, Sharona? Tell everybody your latest comings and goings and shows and hangouts and
you mentioned Back Talk, which is a fun. We talk about sports. We talk about a lot of things that are made for women, and Back Talk is on Monday and Wednesday mornings from 10 to noon Central Daylight Time. And then Friday mornings is Game Over with Vashti and Sharona. And Tuesday nights, the Zone Blitz by NFL Female. We're back. We're better than ever. There's 3 of us. It's Charlie's Angels. And but none of it can compare to Wednesday night Going for 2 with Zach and Sharona.
I'll be at least the 4th favorite show, unless you do that Friday night thing too, right? No?
Huh? I don't do a Friday night thing.
We were last year, I think.
Staying alive. Staying alive.
Yeah.
Friday Night Fever.
Sports by Sharona,
is that a song? Friday Night Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah. So Sports by Sharona, go follow her on the Twitter. She tweets 2/3 more often than I do, at least. So you got that going for you. All I'm doing right now is just trying to keep up with these Scott Fish Bowl interviews. I know we drafted way long ago, and whoever drafted Arian Foster has to be really sad, but that's the way it goes. I took Arian Foster in an MFL 10, and yeah, that's going to be a little more painful. That's the way it goes when you draft early. Bad things can happen.
I own no shares of Arian Foster.
Aren't you special? So Zach Law, Zach_Law on the Twitter. That's how you find me. And Sports by Sharona. So thank you for joining us for a very special, as they all are, edition of Going for 2. And as we always finish, kiss my grits.
Bye.